Buddha on awakening. You're not good or bad, but potential. The Buddha never said that we're innately good. He never said we were innately bad. The mind, when you look at it, has all kinds of ideas, all kinds of potentials, good and bad. The mind itself is neither. It's been a long day. There's been a lot of work. Now it's time to recharge your mind. In the course of recharging your mind, you recharge the body as well. As you get the mind still with the breath and explore the potentials of the breath, you find that it's good for the mind and for the body. Like right now, you can breathe in long or you can breathe in short, fast, slow, heavy, light, deep, shallow. These different ways of breathing will have a different effect on your body and on your mind. You want to see when it's the best effect. We're exploring potentials here. As the Buddha said, there's a potential for a rapture or refreshment. There's a potential for ease. There's a potential for putting forth an effort. Even when the body is tired, the mind doesn't have to be tired. You can put forth an effort in the mind itself based on that potential. It's interesting that in the passage where he discusses the potentials for each of the factors for awakening, he doesn't say what the potentials are, just that they're there. Explore them. They're for you to find out. So be confident that there is a potential for ease in the breath right now, a potential for refreshment and energy. Try to figure out what it is. If you've had experience finding it before, keep that in mind. After all, that's what the Buddha's teachings are all about. They're all about potentials. Awaken to your potentials. Sometimes you hear it said that the Buddha awakened to the 3 characteristics, but in the descriptions that he gives of his own awakening, he never mentions the 3 characteristics. He mentions the 4 noble truths. The 3 characteristics have to do with the way things are. The 4 noble truths have to do with potentials. What potentials those things have. As the Buddha said, there is a potential for a path to the end of suffering, even in those aggregates that are inconstant, stressful, not self. You can put them together in such a way that they deliver you to places beyond them. That's what awakening is all about. The path to awakening is like a ladder that you build up to the side of a house. The house is solid, but the ladder may not be solid at all. It can fall down easily. Maybe it's made out of things that will break. But if it gets you up to where you want to be on the house, it served its purpose. In other words, the path will fall apart at some point after you've put it together. But if you put it together right, it'll deliver you before then to a place where you don't need to depend on the path anymore. That's what the Buddha discovered in his awakening. After all, it makes sense. Just awakening to the idea that the world is this way, the world is that way. Anybody can think in those terms or come up with a theory and use logic to convince themselves that that's the way things are. Sometimes you hear it said that that's what stream entry is all about. Just seeing the way things are, finally admitting to yourself that, yes, the Buddha is right. Things are inconstant. But there's nothing really special about that kind of conclusion. The Buddha, as I said the other night, was very critical of ideas that were just hammered together through logic or inference. He based his teaching on a real experience, having discovered a potential in these things that are inconstant, stressful, and not self that no one had seen before. That's why his awakening was special. He saw that you can put the aggregates together as a state of concentration. You can use them to create right view, right resolve, all the other factors of the path, and those factors will deliver you to something that's not fabricated. So, as I said, the 4 noble truths are about potentials. You've got these aggregates and you could hang on to them with clinging and craving, and you could suffer as a result. That's one potential, and that's the potential that most of us follow. These aggregates do have their pleasures. The Buddha never denied that. He said that if they didn't have their pleasures, we wouldn't be attached to them. But the pleasures can go only so far. Most people will say, well, that's the best we can find in the world. That's as far as it goes. So we might as well content ourselves with them as they are. But the Buddha found that, no, you can take them further. You can make them into a path, and the path leads to something solid. It's not an aggregate. It has nothing to do with the aggregates, but it is a state of consciousness. He calls it consciousness without surface. That's what awakening is all about. The image he gives is of a light beam. The sun rises in the east. There's a house with a window on the east and a wall on the west. The question is, when the sun rises and the light comes in through the window, where does it land? What if there's no wall? It lands on the ground. What if there's no ground? It lands on the water. What if there's no water? It doesn't land. Ordinary consciousness lands on things. This consciousness doesn't land on anything. The word to land there can also be translated as to be established. They talk several times in the canon about unestablished consciousness. There is that potential. It was on discovering that potential that the Buddha was awakened. That's what awakening is all about. Even with stream entry, you have your first glimpse of that. The image here is of water in a well. You stand at the edge of the well and you can see, yes, there is that water down there in the well. But you haven't plunged into it. With full awakening, you've fully plunged. So we're here to explore potentials, not just to decide whether we agree with the Buddha as to whether things are inconstant, stressful, or not. There's a story that one of the Western Ajahns tells about going home after having been in Thailand for several years. His brother asks him, "What did you learn over in Thailand?" The Ajahn says, "Everything is impermanent." And the brother says, "Well, duh, yeah, anybody can see that." But the Buddha saw there was something more important, that within these impermanent things, these inconstant things, there is a potential to create a path to the end of suffering. And that's not a duh kind of discovery. The canon says that the earth quaked when the Buddha gained his awakening, and when he taught his first disciple to gain stream entry, and he too saw the deathless. The earth quaked again, so we're here to explore earth-shaking potentials. Right now, you're mainly concerned with the potential for the path, how to develop it, how to take this breath that you've got right here, right now, how to take this sense of the body as you feel it from within and make something special out of it, something that's refreshing, something that's energizing. If you've been tired from the day, work on a way of breathing, a way of focusing that's energizing. It may depend on how you breathe, where you focus in the body, or what image you have of the breath. After all, perception plays a very important role in concentration. Everything up through the dimension of nothingness, the Buddha calls perception attainments. So what perception would be best right now? You're getting the mind to settle in with a sense of awareness that fills the body. You can think of the breath coming in from outside, or you can have a mental image of the breath originating inside, because that's where the energy of the breath comes from. It comes from inside. You can ask yourself where in the body it starts. Does it start in one spot or several spots? Or how about every cell? Think of every cell breathing in, breathing out in harmony. What does that perception do? You're working with the breath. You're talking to yourself, and you're dealing with feelings and perceptions. You're taking these three types of fabrication, and you're making them into a path, both for the immediate benefits of a sense of well-being, and also so that you can gain insight. You can improve your mindfulness, improve your alertness, and gain insight into how far these fabrications can go. So it's not just a matter of deciding whether you agree with the Buddha or not. You're trying to master the skill that he taught, to explore the potentials you've got right here and see if you can arrive at the same place he did. And you'll know when you do because it's really special. One of the reasons why stream enters have no doubts about the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha is because they've seen that, yes, that's right. You follow the path taught by the Buddha, and it does lead to this experience of the deathless. That's how your conviction is verified and becomes unshakable. Not even an earthquake can shake it. The realization is that overwhelming. The gradual path of skill. The Buddha never said that we're innately good. He never said we were innately bad. The mind, when you look at it, has all kinds of ideas, all kinds of potentials, good and bad. The mind itself is neither. Ajahn Chah has a nice statement where he says, "The mind isn't anything." You can't really define the mind as this, that, or the other thing. It's just the quality of knowing. Ajahn Lee makes the comment that the mind is neither good nor bad, but it knows good and bad. It develops good and bad habits, but eventually it learns how to let go of good and bad. Pointing out that the mind is not innately bad means that we really can help ourselves. If the mind were innately bad, Everything that came out of the mind would be tainted, unreliable. You'd have to depend on some outside force or outside power to save you from yourself. But when the Buddha says we're not innately good, that means there's no spot in the mind that you can tap into where you know that everything that comes from this spot is wise, pure, and reliable. So what do? You try to develop skillful qualities as best you can. In fact, the process of developing skillful qualities is in and of itself a skill. And as with any skill, there are gradations. Given the amount of virtue you can develop and the amount of concentration, your discernment will get more and more subtle, more and more precise as you develop this skill. This is why the path is said to be gradual. The Buddha's image is of the continental shelf off of India. There's a gradual slope and then a sudden drop-off. We all like the idea of the sudden drop-off. We'd like to go right there right away. But you can't get there without the gradual slope. In other words, the potential for awakening is, in principle, always present. But it requires really subtle discernment to see it. And discernment is something that has to be gradually developed. It plays a role in the entire path. It's not the case that you develop virtue and then move on to concentration and then finally get the chance to develop discernment. You need discernment as you're developing your virtue, and you need to develop discernment in order to get into concentration. If you don't understand what's going on in the mind, if you don't have strategies for detecting the hindrances and dealing with them, then the mind's never going to settle down, which means that you have to apply discernment all the way along, simply that it gets more precise, clearer, sharper, more all around as the path develops. How do you develop it? You develop by testing things, and you focus on your actions. You learn from your actions. Ajahn Lee's example is of learning how to sew a pair of pants. The teacher will teach you, okay, this is how you cut the cloth and this is how you push the needle through the cloth. This is how you thread the needle. But how the pants are going to look when you're done, that depends on your own ability to observe what you're doing. If you look at them and see that the stitches are uneven and the cloth was poorly cut, doesn't fit, what do? Do you give up? No, you just go back and you try it again. And you try to observe each time. What went wrong the last time around? That way, you can correct for it the next time. Don't expect that your second pair will be perfect. It takes a while to figure out what to look for and how to judge what works and what doesn't work. And you'll find that as you get better and better at being a tailor, your standards of what qualifies as acceptable workmanship are going to rise. Skill comes from being willing to make a few mistakes and then learn from the mistakes. The kind of person who never wants to admit a mistake is never going to make any progress in this path. And the person who wants to have absolute guaranteed skill right from the very beginning is never going to make progress in the path either. You have to be willing to make a mistake and then learn from it. That attitude is probably the most important part of the practice. When the Buddha set out his teaching, he didn't make it depend on our innate goodness or whatever. It depended on our desire for true happiness. And the interesting thing is that he never defines what true happiness is. Why is that? One reason might be that as you practice, your idea of what qualifies as happiness and well-being is going to develop as well. You simply want to maintain that desire for a happiness that's not going to let you down. Ajahn Mun's final sermon focused in on this. He talks about the different aspects of the practice as being different parts of an army. And as for the warrior and his weapon, that's the desire never to come back and have to suffer ever again. The desire not to suffer, which we all have, is what forms the foundation of how we can practice. The Buddha simply takes it to a level of skill, a level of all-around discernment that goes way beyond what the rest of the world would have accepted. The Buddha had very high standards, and he wants you to have high standards too, as to what you will accept as satisfactory happiness, what you will accept as satisfactory well-being. He shows you step by step that this is better than where you were, and this is better than that, and this is better than that, step by step. And it's up to you to decide whether you're satisfied with the steps. He himself said that the secret of his awakening was, he never let himself rest content with the level of his skill. So it's up to you to decide how far you want to go on the path. Nobody's pushing you. Nobody's forcing it. The Buddha himself doesn't try to force it. After all, he never said that he was our creator. He can't lay down laws for us. He speaks with the authority of an expert, someone who's found that there really is an end to suffering. Then, when you end the mind's self-inflicted sufferings, you solve all the mind's other problems as well. So he points out the way, and it's up to us to ask ourselves, how seriously do you want to be truly happy? That's a question that each of us has to answer for him or herself alone.